Welcome to Your Wealthy Self with me, Regina Martinelli. This show is about money and a whole lot more. Here, we focus on you being able to expand your capacity for money, success, abundance, and inner wealth. And for you to have what's important to you inside and out so you can be your wealthy self. And today is one of those days where we talk about a whole lot more. Today, our topic is embracing life again after a challenging transition or loss, and why that's so important. There are many types of transitions or losses in life that we experience at different times and in different ways, and who we are is impacted by that. Also, how we process through a significant transition also depends on who we are at the time. For example, if you lost a parent in your life, maybe recently or maybe when you were much younger, that impacts who you are differently. And how you process that is impacted by who you are at the time. There are so many life transitions, from losing a loved one, a parent, spouse, dear friend, child, to divorce, retirement, marriage, having a baby, moving, and becoming an empty nester, or even career changes or job loss. And one people don't talk about as much is illness. So how do we prepare ourselves for these transitions? Some we may see coming, and others we may not. We are going to talk about this today with the life transition expert, Cathy Kaufer, who is also a minister and has an animal therapy team. She is a host here at E360 TV as well. So you'll have to stay until the end because she is going to give us actionable advice, excuse me, practical tools, and heartfelt stories to support your next life transition or the one you are about to embark upon. So let's welcome her now. Hello, Cathy. Thank you for being here.
Hello. So happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
And to our audience, you're going to want to stay to the end because we're just going to share so much. It's going to be very impactful in your life. So, Cathy, talk to me about how you see most people dealing with these larger, more significant life transitions in ways that are not as useful as people would like to think.
So say that a little different so I can understand what you're wanting to get out of me. Sorry.
No, it's all right. It's totally fine. What do people do during these times that are common but not as useful as like the tools that you provide? Like there are ways that people are trying to get through the transition that aren't really helping them through the transition.
Right. So a little different each transition depending on the monumentalness of it. So a lot of people just don't even want to deal with it. Right. So they think they're going through it, but they're not really choosing to look at it and walk through it and be better for it. And what do they learn from it? Sorry, there's a plane going overhead. I don't know if you can hear it or not.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. There are, I do. Planes.
And some people just totally hide and ignore it. And they will start drinking or they'll start doing other things. That's tough, right? So, what else did I want to say about that?
Do they go there because that's the easiest place to go, or
that is
because they
the
don't know where else
easiest place to go?
Yeah.
Well, both. I mean, there are support groups for about everything out there right now. And so the hardest part is knowing that you need help getting through it and knowing how to get through it. Because everybody's a little different on how they process it. But people need the tools to be able to process it and process it well. So you can look back and you're like, I'm not where I was and I'm still doing well, right? Instead of just, you've seen those people that something happened to them and they're doom and gloom for years because they just do not want to face what they're going through at the time. So they just exist and just keep going through life, right?
Got
And
it.
not living life and not choosing to live a better life, no matter what is coming at them, what transition they're in.
Thank you. So, what would you suggest is the first thing that people need to do when they know a significant change or transition is coming? I mean, for those of us, the times that we've known
Yeah.
versus the ones that hit unexpectedly.
Yeah, there's a lot of unexpected, right? So the ones that are coming, for instance, so all those examples you had, I've had to deal with.
Mhm.
And some are easier than others. And it's all about your attitude towards it. I feel it's very important what attitude you're going to take. Are you going to be the victim in that transition? Or are you going to be the victor in the transition? And yes, it's okay to have a pity party, but then you have to live. You have to move on. And that's when people get stuck saying, well, if I move on, I'm going to forget that person or that situation or whatever it is that you're going through. And guess what? As you know, as the psychology that you teach, it doesn't go. It's still up here. It's still in your heart with whatever it is that you're going through. So you won't forget it. You'll just learn how to live through it and what did you learn by it and how can it better you? And how can you help others going through it?
Right. So, would you say that those are such great questions to ask? Would you have people journal, like what did you learn? What did you love about it? What do you want to carry forward? What would you do?
Right. So some people like to journal, some don't. From my experience, I'm not a journaler. So what I'll do is I'll talk on a microphone to journal it because you do have to get your emotions out there and know what you're feeling so you can look at it later and go, wow, I've come a long way, or oh my gosh, I'm still stuck. So you know where you're at. And so if you're still stuck, you get help, right? So
Mm.
you go to somebody or a grief group or whatever it is you're going through, because grief is in all of our different traumas and losses and transitions, right? There is, because there's a loss going into that transition, whatever it is. So I'm not sure I answered your question totally, but
No, it's all good. And a question I've always had, because I've had dear friends who've experienced losses too. As a supportive person who has a friend or friends going through transitions, what would you suggest a friend can do to support someone else?
so when a person's going through a transition, they don't always know what they need, right?
Mm.
They're just going through the today, getting through today, right? Depending on the transition. So a lot of times you can offer things to kind of get them to think of what they might need with
Mhm.
regards to what's going on. Do they need, resources? Do they need meals? Do they need just for you to listen to them? Do they need help having alone time if they have kids at home and they really need to get through something? Can I help you with your kids for a couple of hours just so you can have your alone time and think about what needs to happen or what you need to do? And then just be there for them. Don't judge them. Don't say get over it. Yeah. So when I lost my husband of 30 years, shouldn't be done by now? Are you going to get over this? Right. And a lot of people, I'm a real estate broker by trade. I lost a lot of clients because people
Mm.
don't know how to handle it. So what do? They disappear from you. So when you're dealing with your own stuff, people aren't knowing how to deal with it. So you'll find who your true friends are. And for the first 2 weeks, everybody's there. And then everybody kind of goes back to their own life, doing their own thing. And so that's one of the tougher times. So if you are a good friend and love that friend, just be there for them. And then don't judge them and love them and see, just kind of ask little questions to see where they're at, to see if you can think of anything to maybe help them.
Yeah, that's great. It's funny. When I went through my divorce, I had a group of girlfriends that I said, "This is what I want to say about it. Will you please go tell all the people who are my ancillary friends that tear out, so I don't have to tell them, and I don't have to be like
Mm.
6 months later saying, 'Oh yeah, I'm divorced,' and then going, 'Oh, I'm so sorry,' because I'm in a different place
Mhm.
than where that person is just finding out." And then I felt I didn't want the burden of having to take care of someone else's feelings about their disappointment for my marriage when I've already dealt with mine, because that's just not where I was. And I wanted someone else, to kind of, it was a very short 2 sentences. This is it. It's good. Regina's good. Move on. Right. Because within myself and my closest circle, it's like it was a different story, but I could really show my heart, but I didn't want it. It was not anyone's business for me to air it like that or to
Mhm.
share. And I wanted people to know so they wouldn't be like, "Oh, how's so and so?" And then the other thing I realized going through this and having one of my dearest friends have lose her partner is, and you tell me what you think about this, instead of saying, "Oh, how are you? How are you doing, Cathy?" It's more like, "How are you today?" You know,
Exactly.
today, like in this moment. Or I'd say when I find when someone goes, "Oh, I lost so and so," I'll be like, "And how are you doing with that?" Versus me assuming they need this huge amount of compassion or a shoulder to cry on, because it's heartbreaking to hear the news. But the truth
Mhm.
is, you don't know where they are in their journey of it and their
Correct.
processing of it. They could be on a high of it. They could be in okay. They could be peaceful part. They could be in a devastating part. So I always just keep it very simple, like, "How are you today?" Or, "And how are you doing with that?" So I could meet them there instead of bringing
Mhm.
all of my, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," blah, blah, blah. Because then someone's like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want to deal with your stuff about
So
what
true.
I'm going through."
So true. Yeah, so, it's going to be 10 years since my husband died. And people are just, when they hear, they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "Thank you. It's okay." You know, he's a, so I worked on it a long time. So yeah,
Yeah.
you don't know. And that's what you don't want to say. So when you're approaching somebody, you can say sorry for your loss and just say, "So how is today? How is your day today?" Right?
Mhm.
And then that's kind of another way to say it. So they're just like, what do you don't tell, because then there's some of them that aren't over it will go, "How do you think my day is?" Right?
Mm.
So
Mm.
yeah, so yeah, I like what you said.
Oh, great. So, what are the long term impacts of people not really addressing these deep traumas or grief for themselves?
They will not be in a good place. They
Mhm.
they will not grow. And usually people that have a lot of trauma and loss, they decide to exist in their space. So they tend to be a little bit more cynical, a little bit more critical, and see things through a different lens than people that who are trying to get through it and learn from it and be better from it,
Mhm.
right? Because if you're
Mhm.
talking about loss from a person perspective, everyone wants you to be happy. Anyone that's going to be leaving this world wants you to be happy, and that's so hard for people to accept, right?
Mhm.
They want you to live your best life, but it's us that stops us going, "Oh, I'll forget about them. I'll forget their voice. I can't do that. I'm not honoring them." And that's not true. You're honoring them by working on yourself, being the best version of yourself you can be, so you can make a difference in the world.
Yeah, because, when you lose someone, if you stop living, then you've also kind of died yourself. And
Mhm.
that's not what the person passing would want, nor the people
Correct.
who love you, who are still here. So that's a good point. And there's a place where I think there's a lot of guilt people feel, or even shame for being happy after that.
Mhm.
And it's unfortunate because it comes to like we are holding up a standard for ourselves, or trying to give or we're not allowing us the permission slip to have a life, because there's so much when you've had such tremendous loss, it can actually open you up to actually have a bigger capacity for love. And I don't know, you if you think about your most favorite person in the world, if that happened to them and then they felt like I can't be happy now that I've lost someone I love because I won't be honoring them, you would never want that for that person. So
Yeah, you
then,
want to shake them too.
yeah, and they don't want that for you. So
Stop
it's
it,
kind of like,
right?
so don't do it to yourself either.
Mhm.
It's such an interesting how we guilt ourselves like we can't ever be happy. Otherwise, it shows we didn't have as much love. Actually, your deep sadness shows how much love you had, and we're not on this earth to have deep sadness for all of our life, right? We're
Mhm.
here to have the roller coaster of emotions and experiences. So when you have clients who don't know where to start to address, their deep grief, where do you suggest they start?
So there's there's two different angles, only because I have found that people that have deep grief that were not in a good situation, let's say it's a person that passed, they feel shame, they feel guilt because they were not in a good place with that person when that person left, right? So a lot of times people have unnecessarily guilt and they don't know what to do with it. So they don't know how to talk about it. They don't know, they really just don't know how to grieve. They're just angry because
Mhm.
this person left and they didn't be able to resolve whatever issue they had. So they have a harder time grieving. It usually takes longer for them to grieve because they weren't in a good place, right?
Mhm.
Rather than the people that were in a good place and you still have the same grief because that person is gone, but you don't tend to have as much guilt about it.
Mhm.
The only guilt you may have about it is if you weren't able to have the conversation about, if I go, I want you to be happy, I want you to remarry, I want you to have more kids, whatever it is, whoever has lost, you didn't have a plan, meaning you didn't know what their wishes are. But I have
Mhm.
not met anyone that had a plan say, no, I want you to be miserable. And I want you to stay down in the dumps for the rest of your life because I was everything to you.
Mhm.
They don't have that. No one
Right.
has that, right? Most people on their deathbed are like, live for me. Do things I wanted to do on this life. Don't just sit there and sulk and suffer forever. Make a difference. Do what you think I would love to do, and then celebrate it with me as you're doing it.
Mm.
So,
Oh, that's wonderful. So, do you can you make the distinction um, between like there's grief that needs to process, and then there's suffering that we can let go of, like kind of the difference, right? I don't know if you've ever had to deal with that.
well, the grief we all have to deal with,
Mhm.
right? And there's certain ways to deal with grief, but the suffering we do ourselves, the suffering that we
Mm.
put ourselves through for whatever grief we're going through. So that there's two different entities. One, you have to
Mhm.
go get through, get over. Everybody's like, get over it. You're not going to get over it. You go through it because you never lose that person. You never lose whatever it was that you lost. It's still in your heart, right? So you do have to do the grief work first,
Mm.
but also know that that person would want the best for you, usually. I mean, there's some narcissists that, no, they don't care. But you show them by being the best self you can be and that you're better off, you know. But anyway, I don't mean to be tongue in cheek about that. But, yeah, I've had a lot of narcissistic people in my life that it's like, no. So you just have to find your worth yourself again without that person and know, who am I? And that's the biggest question, right? So is, who am I without this person or job or whatever? Because a lot of people with, like, if you're talking about losing a job, you have to go through the grief, but that job is not who you are. And you have to disassociate yourself from that and go, I am not that job. This is who I am. But that takes grieving, and that takes a lot of self-reflection. So you know who you are, you know your character, and so then you can go, okay, now what do I want to do? What next steps do I need to do to get to my next, I'm not going to say goal, but it is a goal, right? Knowing what you want next and how you want to I guess you have to so with me, I found my purpose after my husband died, right? And I would not have known that was my purpose. But your purpose is in you from the time you're born, I think, right? So God put stuff in you that you just know. Because I always knew I wanted a miniature horse, and I wanted a miniature dog, and I wanted to do therapy. And this is way, way back before. And then a month before he died, I got a miniature horse. 2 weeks after he died, I got a miniature Australian Shepherd. And I'm like, what am I going to do therapy with, right? I didn't know, because usually with a horse, it's usually kids that have learning disabilities or autistic, right? I did not know that both of my horse and dog were going to be registered therapy animals that I take to hospitals, that I take to kids' homes, I take to foster homes, I take everywhere, and it's to bring smiles and hope, right? And then if they need one-on-one time, I will, have them sit with my horse or my dog. My horse is only 38 inches, so he's as tall as your little table, right? So he'd sit in your lap if you let him. And so just people connect with that. And then I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to help people get through trauma and loss. So that's how I found my purpose. I would tell you 10 years ago, did not know that. Yeah.
Wow, how amazing. And then you have your miniature horse, your miniature dog helping you, and helping people heal. They helped you heal and they help others heal. That is wonderful, Catherine. Really wonderful. Well, thank you, Catherine. We could talk for hours, and we are going to carry this conversation on into the next week. So make sure you watch next week as we continue this conversation. Whether you are going through a divorce, a marriage, loss of a loved one, struggling with illness, job change, and you're going to want to learn what Catherine has to say. I know, isn't that fun?
Yeah.
Sometimes when I man these things, I get like, oh, what am I doing? I'm going to pop up. Oh, it's in the wrong spot, but it's all right. This is how you find Catherine, embracinglifeagain.com. Thank you for being here with us today. And I really look forward to keep chatting. If you got anything from today, please share it. There's enough fear in the world, so let's continue to create joy. And please send your questions to yourwealthyself@e360tvlive.com. I love and adore you, and I look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank